Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this session, Prepare for Exam DP 203 and the Azure Data Engineer Associate Certification. My name is Sandra Marin, and I am part of the Microsoft Worldwide Learning team. And with me is James Herring, Senior Content Developer in the Data and AI Content team. And we're going to be guiding you on giving you tips and tricks on how to prepare for this exam, what it is about, what to expect. James, do you want to say hi to our audience?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Like Sandra said, my name is James Herring. I'm a senior content developer within Worldwide Learning, and I currently own the DP203 exam content.
Perfect. So we are with the expert in the topic. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about the certification and kind of like your general journey, what you need to consider as you are preparing for this certification. And James is going to go really deep into the topics and the skills that are measured in the exam DP203 and will help you identify those key topics that you should focus on when you are studying or preparing for your exam. Uh, Later, we're going to review in general how to prepare for Microsoft exams. We're going to share some interesting resources to help you get familiar with the experience of taking Microsoft exams if you haven't done it before, and some resources to help you prepare and stay certified. Now, we're going to start with the Azure Data Engineer Associate certification. So this is going to be a simple overview of the general path you should go through. This certification is a associate level certification, and it has only one exam as requirement. The exam is the DP203 Data Engineering on Microsoft Azure. So data engineers, the role itself are people that have some subject matter expertise in everything about preparing data and getting data ready to later build analytic solutions. So this role does data integration, transformation, consolidating data from different sources. And these sources are structured and unstructured data system. And as I mentioned before, one of the main goals of the main activities of this role is to get this data ready for later analytic solutions. These are the skills that are measured, which are totally related to the role definition. And this is part of what James is going to help us going into greater detail in a moment. Before getting there, I want to show really quick the path for getting certified. So if you haven't, take a look into the Microsoft Azure Data Fundamentals Training and Certification. This certification is highly recommended, and this training is highly recommended. It's not a requirement, but if you want to be sure that you have the basics on data concepts, how to manage data in the cloud, how to manage data on Azure, then you should look into this training. And then this is a great foundation for you to start preparing for the DP203 exam. And the DP203 exam, as James is gonna help us, is gonna help you get prove that you have all the skills in data engineering that are required for this role. So you will see in this presentation a lot of resources to help you prepare. And then once you take and pass the exam DP203, you will earn the Azure Data Engineer Associate certification. And this certification, as all Microsoft certifications, will be valid for 1 year. And after that year, you will have to renew it. And I will show you at the end the very simple renewal process that we have established for Microsoft certifications. But for now, this is how you need to think of your complete journey to become Microsoft certified Azure Data Engineer Associate. Before going there, I want to really show what the certification on the exam page look like, because this is where you're gonna take a look at all the information. So This is the data engineering, Azure Data Engineer Associate certification page. So in this page, you will see all the descriptions, you will see the content that we recommend to prepare, and you will see a lot of resources here. And from here, you can go to the exam page as well, and you can review all the content. And in the exam page, again, you're gonna see all the details, and James is gonna share this a little bit more, but you can see here all the skills measure, and even you can take a look at in greater detail to the skills and the topics that are considered for the exam. So this is a very valuable resource once you are preparing for your exam. So now the real expert and the main speaker for this session. James, you can take over from here and tell us more about the exam DP203.
Thank you very much. So we're going to cover, and just as a reminder, this is recorded, but we will be live in the chat session. So if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll get answers to you as quickly as possible in real time. Okay. So let's look at what's in the actual objective domain. Sandra just showed you this in the objective domain, which you went to the exam guide. And the breakdown is really important here because the way that we score this, you can see if you're really weak on data security and optimizing data storage and data processing, those are smaller parts of what a data engineer needs to focus on, which is designing and implementing in its current state data storage solutions on the Microsoft and the Azure Databricks platforms primarily. And then also designing and developing data processing. So this is where we're talking about Lambda type of architectures where we have batch versus streaming data, and we will cover this as well. So if there's any questions about this, again, feel free to ask throughout. Now, when we look at one of the first portions, which is the design and implement data storage, we have 6 components that make this up. Now, within these 6 components, there are subcomponents, and that's where the objective domain really comes into focus. This is almost 50% of your exam score here. So we can see what we're wanting to do is we're not building data engineers. It would take several semesters of college to become a good and proficient data engineer, and probably a couple years of experience. But the first thing we want to focus on is really the data storage structure. And in data storage, what we're really talking about primarily is going to be Azure Data Lake storage. So we're going to want to know how to build it, how to secure it, how to name it, how to use different types of files within it, and we're going to have best practices around it. This is when we get to the partition strategies and then get up to the serving layer. And the serving layer within the data engineering on Microsoft Azure is really exciting, and it's really getting more exciting with some of the integration points we're doing with Cosmos DB and even some other elements like Dataverse and Purview, which are coming if they're not out already. And then we're going to talk about the physical data storage structures themselves. This is where we have Azure Data Lake, where we have the hierarchical structures. And those hierarchical structures are going to be more of a file-based format. And within them, we can have Parquet files, Avro. Parquet is probably going to be one of the more common because it's columnar in nature, and it's also native to the Spark engine that we might be using. And then we're going to talk about logical data structures. This may be where we actually create a dedicated SQL server pool, and we do a CTAS operation or create table of select statement operation, which brings that data that's in the data lake through Spark into the local database for better performance and more abilities. And then we have the implement the serving layer, and this is ultimately where we create views which may have a cross section of local storage in that data warehouse as well as the data lake. But to the user that may be consuming it in something like DP500, which is around, or DA100, which is around Power BI, then they're going to be able to consume those and benefit from it. Now, next we have the second largest portion, which is design and develop data processing. This exam currently does have a lot of design elements in it, but I think going forward you're going to see some changes with this because, again, we're not training you to be a data engineer. We're just teaching you how to use your engineering skills on the Microsoft platform. So in this, we're going to talk about ingestion and transformation, and I'll be a little bit redundant in this because I really want to get it embedded in everybody's thoughts. But when we talk about ingest and transform, we're really talking about ways to do notebooks. And to a lot of data engineers that are familiar with the Microsoft platform traditionally, notebooks are a new concept, but they're also a very powerful concept for a number of reasons, which include the ability to use different languages. So if you're familiar with Scala, or if you're familiar with Python, or even Spark SQL, which still uses Transact SQL or type of SQL, I should say, inside of it, we're able to do ingestion and transformation by using that. And that's what we're going to talk about. And we're going to do labs on it as well, whether in IoT or in Learn. Now, we'll discuss that further, but if you do some of these labs, unfortunately, because of the cost of these products, it does require you to have a license that has administrative rights. But I'll mention that again later. Then we're going to talk about designing and developing a batch processing solution. So remember, I mentioned um, the Lambda architecture. So this is the batch side, and then we have the develop a streaming processing side, which I'll point out again, which includes both Event Hub and Stream Analytics. Now, we're not primarily concerned about you building an Event Hub because that Event Hub could be tied to a Kafka server in the back end, which could be on premises, and we don't care about that. What we care about is being able to consume it in something like Databricks and be able to look at the time values in different windows. So when we do Azure Stream Analytics, for instance, we're going to worry more about building the queries inside of that, which are also going to use windowing functions. And you will be tested on those windowing functions in it, so it's important to know and learn. And then we're going to talk about managing the batches and pipelines. And this is really about getting everything structured together. So in the old ELT or ETL world, we're kind of transforming you more to an ELT or an extract, load, and transform. And a lot of folks know that ETL, ELT, TEL, those were always meant to be kind of an acronym that you could switch around based on the environment. And we're finally to the point to where ETL is the on-premises approach, whereas ELT allows us to take it from anywhere and load it first, right? So we use that horsepower to load it, and then we use all the horsepower of these clusters, these Spark clusters, these MPP clusters, massively parallel processing clusters, to crunch and run a lot of these numbers. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. And then I put these two together just because they're smaller. They're also smaller, but if you take into account that they can make up 30% of your score, 700 is going to be passing. That has no bearing necessarily on it being 70, being 700 of it. These percentages being that part of that 700. So if you ignore these and you get 100% on the other ones, that doesn't mean you're going to pass. So be cautious of that. These are just um, pieces that are done by the psychometricians that help determine the score. But when we talk about design and implement security, these are important elements. We're going to be working with Azure Active Directory, and we're going to be setting policies and standards. These could be expiration policies. So we could have a customer that has access to a data for a certain period of time, or it could be just setting up roles and policies within Azure for the Synapse analytics platform to certain data elements and stuff. And we're going to talk about implementing security. And there's actually a really good module that helps you secure your data well. But never, especially in today's day and age, do you disregard security. Then we talk about the operational aspects. And that's where we talk about monitoring and optimizing data storage as well as data processing. Again, it's a small percent, it's an important percent. That's going to be an important area, because if we can't operationalize it, then we're going to be constantly troubleshooting it and we're unable to do new development. So we want to make sure that we're very aware about how to properly operationalize this, create run books, that kind of thing up at a higher level, and then have disaster recovery, HADR, and all that is met. And if you do the AZ 900, then that's where we talk about different processes and being able to calculate composite SLAs. So that's why, as Sandra had mentioned earlier, AZ 900, I would say DP 900 as well, are both two courses that would be really beneficial to anybody that's wanting to take the DP 203 exam. So, some of the hands-on labs, we do have hands-on labs where they have exercises. Now, you can see at the very bottom it says these labs require an Azure subscription with administrative rights. And that's, unfortunately, we used to have labs or sandboxes that you could run these in, but they are quite expensive resources. And when you look at these right here, we've got Azure Databricks, we've got SQL pools, and Synapse Analytics. Those have cost per minute in some cases. And some people leave them running, which cost overruns. So we really had to, it just became too expensive. But if you do have a subscription, even a trial subscription, the free subscription, you can still go through these and manage it pretty effectively. And keep your eyes open, because we're going to be improving this to where it's less dependent on the prior lab to run. We're going to make them where they're mutually exclusive from one another, to where each lab, if you want to start in the middle, you can, without having to build everything prior to that. But this is some really good stuff that's out here on GitHub, and I'll show you some shots of that as well. So when we're talking about the labs, I think one thing that's important is the different modules. And let me go back just real quick to show you the lab environment. So this is what it'll look like when we do it, and you'll see these are the individual modules. And like I said, unfortunately, they are somewhat dependent upon you running scripts at certain levels that will load data for you, that will build services for you. So it'll build your Databricks cluster for you. However, you will go inside of that Databricks, I should say Databricks service for you, and then you'll go inside Databricks and build a cluster on your own. Same thing with the serverless pools. That's going to come kind of out of the box because it's serverless. But when we do dedicated SQL pools, then you're going to create that. But you need some pre-work done, and we do this within the scripts and all the directions, the Git repository, and all that's available there for you. So if there's any questions, just bring them up, and we'll go back here. So just a second. Apologies. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and advance. We're going to go a little bit deeper into what these modules do. So when we talk about the requirements and setup, you're going to see setup steps in every one of these labs. So I may repeat it a few times in here, but the requirements, this is really to initiate you to use PowerShell, because here, ideally, you would have a VM. If you were in an instructor-led training course, it would be a VM that's provided for you, but you can run it on your local machine. It may require some additional steps, but you'll run PowerShell in administrator mode, and it'll walk you through all this, and you'll be able to paste the scripts that you need to run, which may include, well, they will include Git clones, CDs. You may use a CLS to clear the screen because it's filled up, and make sure that when you run it that you remember passwords, write them down, and that kind of thing. But really, this is to initiate you with that. And this is going to set up instances for you again, so you don't have to manually create services. Now, it is possible in some cases, if there's a policy in a certain region that's set by your administrator, that you may not be able to create it from the script. If you have that happen, you still have the ability to go to the region that's provided for you based on GDPR. That you can go and set it up maybe manually as well and still run the lab. But it's really, think of it, I always do think of it as a learning experience if you have to kind of troubleshoot the script and run it, because it's hard to build these scripts and everything for an environment that is different based on the organization. So when we look at module 1, this is really talking about exploring and computing storage options for data engineering. So this lab is really going to give you the opportunity to use the Apache Spark and the Databricks cluster first, as well as in the Azure Synapse Analytics. And they're going to be using primarily notebooks in it. Now with the Databricks, the notebooks are pre-built for you. We want you to run through it and understand what it's doing, especially when we talk about the different levels of Delta Lake, because you're going to be tested on that as well. And then talking about working with Apache Spark and Synapse Analytics. This, again, like I said, this is new experience for a lot of data engineers from the traditional Microsoft sense. If you've been using anything from 2017 to 2019, you've had the ability to do it. You may not know it, but when you install SQL Server on your local machine, the Developer Edition, which is basically Enterprise Edition, then you actually have Anaconda and Jupyter notebooks that are installed. You just have to go to them, and you can run notebooks from there. And then there's also some great learning that you can do using tools like Docker, where you can actually run containers, and there's pre-built containers that you can leverage as well as you get more experience with it. Module 2, there's a total of 11 modules. Not all of them are heavy. Most of them have a lot of good knowledge, but we do try to break it out into relevant sections. And this one's really about running interactive queries. What that means is we're going to query the Data Lake Store, Azure Data Lake Store v2, in a hierarchical structure with Synapse serverless SQL pools. And then we're going to use Active Directory at the last part, which is a separate lab or lesson within it that's going to secure it before you move forward to the next lab environment, which is going to be highly dependent upon that security. Module 3, we're talking about data exploration and transformation in Azure Databricks. This has another lab set up with the prerequisites where you're going to import some notebooks that we've pre-built for you. And you're going to work with data frames, and then you're going to do some data frames with advanced methods. So there's no, this is going to be in Python. It's not going to be in R. But if you do know R, you're more than welcome to change and convert these scripts into R and test it out. You'll see it works quite well against the Spark engine as well. With Module 4, this is going to be a challenge for some folks that are used to something like some of the older tools, SSIS, for instance. We're not going to talk about SSIS as much because we're really focused on the Synapse Analytics. The notebooks first with transforming, because it's such a great tool of collaboration. Because if I create a notebook, I can use Markdown to actually document what I'm doing. I don't have to use, it's still good to put comments in your code, but I can use Markdown to put images of what I'm doing. Maybe I have a workflow from a SME, a subject matter expert in my business line that's provided, and I want to put it in there. And then I want to make sure that I document my code. Now, I may be writing code in Python, but then the next person that comes in does their step, collaborating in the same notebook, maybe using Scala to import and transform data, or they could be using SQL, Spark SQL, or they could even be using R if they like. So it uses magic keys, which is nothing more than 2 parentheses to switch languages, and you'll be able to see that within the notebooks as well. And then we're going to talk about the integration of SQL and Spark pools in the Azure Synapse Analytics as well. So this is very relevant to the role, to the exam, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy it as well. Now, Module 5, this is where we're talking about moving more towards a traditional type of data warehouse. So we've been using the lake up to this point, but this is where we create that actual dedicated SQL pool creation and really an introduction to Polybase if you've not used it before, which I've always referred to as kind of a federated query engine. Because if you hit a Hadoop cluster with Polybase, even from an on-premises SQL Server 2019, actually 2017 or higher, then what you have the ability to do is push and pull data to a Hadoop cluster, or in this case, Azure Data Lake storage, with simple select statements. Now, there are some pre-steps to set it up, and it used to be pretty complex to do. But with the way that we're doing it in Synapse now, you can literally browse to a location, right click, and say select top 100, and it will do all of the work for you. Now, in the labs, be cautious. There's going to be a placeholder for your dynamically created lab name from the scripts that you're going to have to paste in there. So if you see errors associated with that, check your code. And I would encourage you always to read the code and understand it, then execute it, make sure that you actually understand what it's doing. And then we're going to talk about petabyte scale ingestion with Azure Synapse pipelines. And this is where we're going to use the ability of pipelines, which is very similar. I mean, ADF and Synapse pipelines are really the same tool, but one's used for a different method. Synapse pipelines are for Synapse, whereas Azure Data Factory, as we'll see in Module 6, is where we're able to do Data Factory, building pipelines almost identical, very identical, but it's where we may take something like Azure Data Factory and pull something from S3 to Azure Databricks. So it gives us that code-free transformation at scale with the Azure Synapse pipelines and the Azure Data Factory as well. So you're still going to see some of that because the two products are very close to each other. One came from the other. It's just more tightly integrated. And that's Module 6. And then we have integrate data from notebooks with Azure Data Factory or Synapse Analytics. And this is really creating Synapse Spark notebook to find top products. It's a great little lesson when we talk about some of the indexing and some of the other features that are available within Synapse and the pipeline. So it's not as short. It's a single bullet point, but I assure you it's still a pretty longer lesson. I've mentioned security. It's an important piece, and we have end-to-end security with Azure Synapse Analytics. So we're going to talk about securing it with the supporting infrastructure appropriately, whether we're using keys, whether you're using roles, and making sure that we have hopefully some type of key vault involved in this and some cycling of keys as well. Key management systems are what we're really worried about. But from a data engineer, we just want to make sure that we provide and secure the data appropriately based on the technical and functional specs that are provided to us. And if they're not there, we need to have that feedback loop to the SMEs to make sure that we do secure it properly. But these labs are going to really walk you through how to secure the workspaces and all the managed services, and then just the workspace data in general. And it's going to lock it down pretty good. And then Module 9, this is where we're talking about the hybrid transactional analytic processing, or HTAP, and this is with Synapse Link, which is really cool. So we're going to configure Azure Synapse Link with Cosmos DB. You're going to run a script prior to this. That's going to take some time. This is a coffee break moment here. So it will take some time. It's going to load lots of records into Cosmos DB, and your query is your Cosmos DB with Apache Spark from Azure Synapse Analytics. And this is going to kind of give us the streaming real-time ability because we're going to use the SQL serverless SQL pool for Azure Synapse Analytics to do that. But this is some really neat, cool stuff because this is where we're able to have that CTAS operation and the dedicated SQL pool blended in a view with this data lake with streaming data or real-time data that's coming from Cosmos DB and blend those together. And this can really create some really unique reports. And it's a great power and flexibility. Module 10, we're almost through this piece. This is a real-time streaming. So this is where we're going to focus on Event Hub, or actually Stream Analytics. We're going to configure the services. This is probably something that you're not going to do in the real world. Hopefully, we want dual controls between roles so we don't make mistakes and make shortcuts. But what we're going to do here is we're going to connect to an Event Hub or Stream Analytics, and we're going to write queries, and we're going to use windowing functions. So if you think about it from the perspective of maybe a toll booth, and we've got a dynamic toll booth generation, it's not manned or anything. This is where we may spin up, we see traffic coming with machine learning up ahead, so we dynamically spin up another toll booth. So cars are coming through, and we're being able to see with this stream analytics how many cars are coming through each toll booth. And we can do windowing functions so we can look at it from different perspectives based on the needs and requirements. But there's basically 5, might be 6 now, windowing functions that you might be tested on within the exam. But I would expect you to see that on the exam. And then we talk about stream processing with event hubs, and this is going to be more. It's just a different approach to streaming, but we're going to look at structured streaming processes and concepts here. We're going to also still work with time windows and event hubs, and we're also going to look at streaming with Databricks. And it's something that I think you're going to see more of, depending on the size of your organization, is going to really drive, and the needs of the organization are going to drive whether you use Event Hub or Stream Analytics. But both of them are great skills to have, and it's a fun lab as well. I didn't put Module 11 down because it's really just kind of a cleanup. But I wanted to do a quick demo, and this is really on that objective domain that Sandra showed earlier that gets into the details. And what I want to do is really start from the learn content where we have to log in. So we can see I'm logged in here. And what I want to do is say I want to do a search and I want to say Synapse. So I've looked at an objective domain, and I see that I don't know anything about HTAP, right? So let's look for HTAP. Let me take that away. Hopefully we have something. No. We'll try Spark. I'll put Spark back in there. It was. So with Spark, I can see several different things. So I've got a module. If you see anything like a learning path, what you're going to see when you click on it is that you have different elements of it. Now, what's cool about this is a full learning path on performing data engineering with Azure Synapse Apache Spark pools. I may not be interested in all of that, but what I want to do is I want to do one of these, and I want to click Save here. Now, when I click Save, I've already got one Learning Spark, Learning DP203. I want to create a new collection. So I'm going to call this, let's see, we'll just call this Synapse Spark. And I can put a description on it, and I can click Submit, and then it'll select it for me, and I click Save. So now I can go back, and I can browse for other things as well. And maybe I want to add some T-SQL because it's been so long since I've done anything with T-SQL. And I can see that I have a whole learning path here. And these very well may, when we look through these, have sandboxes in them. So the easy way to check that is to click on the exercise, And we can see, yes, this has a lab or a sandbox that's associated with it. So I'm going to go back here because this seems like really good stuff. And I'm going to click save, get back to get started. Use this crumb trail. It's a great place to really get this in. And I'm going to save this whole learning path in there. And I'm going to also put this in my Synapse Spark collection. I can create many collections in here. And now, how do I get back to this collection? Because I don't see anything on here with collections. And the way to do that is to click on your name, and you can go profile, and you can scroll down. You can see collections, and then I can just see that I've got difference. I've got Synapse Spark, which is my new collection. I can click on this, and here it is. So if any description, if I need to add one, I can add it. I can add additional pieces to it. I can create new sections in this. So I can create a section title. I can get really elaborate with this. And the nice thing is if you're a data engineer that's teaching junior data engineers, you can create collections, and Sandra and their team have created collections as well that allow you to share it with others so they don't have to go through all the rigor of searching for what's relevant for them. So if you've taken the exam and you want to help others learn to pass it, this is a great way to do it, is create collections and then share it with them. So we've got this share button right here. I can share it even on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or email. So feel free to do that. And I think it's a great way to get time management, because if I look at one of my other collections that I had, let me go back. If I click on one of my other ones, like Learning Spark, I can see that I've got a percent complete. So to me, that's a great way, right? I still need work to do on it. I can click in and I can go ahead and continue to learn. So I wanted to share that with you guys, because I think collections are a great way to actually build a learning plan that not only you can use, but others can use as well. And with that, I'll hand the platform back over to Sandra. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'll still be here in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you very much. This is so great. All that you share, James, is fantastic, and I hope our learners participating in this audience are really taking advantage of all these resources that you just shared. So I wanna go into similar content, but I'm not gonna go into all this deep technical expertise that James was sharing, but I want to show you in general what you should expect when you are taking Microsoft exams. Um, so there are some basics about exams, and this is a framework. This is not general rules here, but in general, you should expect something between 40 and 60 questions. We have a large pool of questions, so we have way more questions than 40 of 60. So if you take the same exam several times, you won't get repeated questions. Our pool of questions is really large. But the interesting thing about the questions, and if you remember, um, James was showing the weight by topic. So some topics, you will find more questions for some of those topics that he was saying 40 to 45%, 10 to 15%. But also the questions have different scoring. So depending on the question that you are answering, you might get 1 point or different points for your total score. What does that mean to you? That be sure you answer all the questions, even if you are not totally certain that that's the right answer. Answer, because if you are not sure and you don't answer, that might be a that might give you a counter effect and taking points away from you, rather that if you answer the question and maybe you got the right answer, that will add up to your final score. So there is no penalty for guessing, meaning answer all the questions that you can. Some questions you can skip. You can still skip questions and decide not to answer. We don't recommend it, but you can still do it. But some questions you cannot skip. Some questions you must answer because if you don't answer, you cannot go to the next question. So that's important when you are answering, when you are taking your test. And you can mark items for review. If you're not sure about an answer, just mark that question. And one interesting thing when you are doing exams is that um, sometimes one question helps you answer a previous one because you get one question is like, oh, okay, so then you realize that a previous question is similar topic and then you can go back. So if you mark the items, it will be easier for you to go and check. Now, in general, we ask people to plan for about 3 hours for the exam, but out of those 3 hours, the first part is to get you set up, and you need to read the instructions, you need to sign the agreements and all this stuff, and also you at the end of the exam, we ask you to give us feedback on the questions. So there is out of those 3 hours. Um, there is some time that we just ask you to have just in case, so you have time and you don't have to rush in. So plan for about 3 hours, especially for these role-based certifications. All the exams require a minimum passing score of 700 points. Based on what I told you before, so not all the questions have the same weight or score, so be sure to answer them all. And there are different type of questions. There are questions that are multiple choice or single choice, or questions where you have to type an answer or do drag and drop. So there are different type of questions, and even some exams may have hands-on labs where you actually are presented with a virtual machine, and you need to do an exercise to demonstrate that you know how to use the platform. And some questions, depending on the exam, have case studies where you are presented with a situation, and you are asked to analyze the information and the requirements, and based on that answer multiple questions. So that's important around. If you go to this link, aka.ms explore Microsoft exams, you can see a full document about the basics and the different components that we have in an exam. Now, if this is the first time that you're going to take a Microsoft exam, or if you haven't taken an exam in a while, I recommend you to do to use this AKAMS exam demo. So this is a very interesting tool that is, and I'm going to show it to you right now. It's a sandbox area. So it's a demonstration of an exam. I'm not going to go into full detail, but this is very close to what the experience of taking a Microsoft exam is. So when you do the exam, you need to do well. You're going to have to do here. Accept the agreements, but here this will give you a pretty good feeling on what it takes to take an exam. So you will have here, okay, this happens in a real exam. You see this information, and all this content happens when you are taking your exam. And then all this is pretty close to the experience. And and then here you will see different type of questions, like, okay, this is a single selection question, and then you will have here other, remember the review later or the leave feedback. So you can do that. This is how the actual exam is. You have multiple selection questions. So this is a good, if this is the first time or you haven't done an exam in a while, I truly recommend to go and check this resource, so you get familiar and it's like, okay, now you are prepared, and you know what to expect. James, can we go back to the, thank you. Now, another resource I want to share with you is the exam readiness zone. This is brand new. We released this just a couple of months ago on Microsoft Learn, the exam readiness zone. So this is a set of resources that will help you prepare to take different Microsoft exams. You will find in the exam readiness zone study guides for the exam. So the study guide is totally aligned with the objective domains that James was talking about and the skills that are measured per each exams. And then you have also exam preparation videos. And these exam preparation videos is all those topics that James was talking about. So these videos actually go in very great detail of topics and technologies, and it's like a this session but longer because they will help you to understand in more detail where to focus your study journey and what topics you should be considering, and it will explain some of the technologies and stuff like that that is included in the exam. And then practice tests. Um, we have a lot of practice tests. Pretty much for every exam there is a practice test, and these are real experiences where you can go and simulate that you are taking an exam, and it's not the actual questions from the exam but very similar, so you can take a look at the type of questions and how the questions are structured, how they are phrased, so that you get familiar on what it looks like. And the other cool thing about exam practice tests is that you can do a study mode, so you can actually get the answers and see if you fail the answer or if you answer correctly, and then it will give you an idea of like, oh, okay, I answered this question the wrong way, so it will give you resources on what more study material to prepare. So this exam readiness zone, as I mentioned, is brand new. We released this a couple of months ago. Not all the exams are available yet. This exam DP203 is not there yet, but we are releasing new exams every month. So stay tuned and come often to this exam readiness zone to check on newly released exams. We will be releasing all the exams material until we cover the full Microsoft certification portfolio. I'm gonna show you really quick before we go to resources. I'm gonna show you what the exam readiness zone looks like. So you go to that link, exam readiness show on Microsoft Learn, and then um, you will find here uh, all the different, these are the ones that we have released already. So when you go to each one of these episodes or videos, these are the exam preparation videos. um, you will see, I'm going to show you just developer just for the exercise to show you what is in there. So you will find the exam preparation videos, and then you will also see here all those additional resources like the study guide, the practice test, and the exam sandbox. So this is a very, very cool resource to help you in your preparation. Now, back to the presentation. This is a compilation of resources that, this is a summary of some of the resources that James already shared with you during this great presentation. So the exam guide is where the one I showed at the beginning, where you can see all the skills and weights and all the topics that are included, which are basically what James spent all this time helping us with. And then James was talking about collections. We have an official collection with the content that we recommend on Microsoft Learn, self-paced content to help you prepare for the exam DP203 and the data engineer. So if you go to the link aka.ms Azure Learn Data Engineer, this is the official collection with all the content that we recommend you. But also, if you want instructor-led training, if you want deep training with an instructor that can help you with answering questions, or that brings business and brings actual experience in a company or in an organization, we highly recommend our Microsoft Learning partners. They deliver the official Microsoft official curriculum, and there is a course for this, the DP203, and these courses are taught by Microsoft certified trainers. So you have the certainty that these people are experts in the topic and have experience and are instructors that will help you consume all this content even better. So you have options if you want to study on your own self-paced learning. If you want to do instructor-led training, we have Microsoft Learning partners all over the world. The labs that James already shared with us, and I think he also mentioned Microsoft technical documentation. This is the last resource. Now, I want to share something really quick about staying certified. I mentioned this at the beginning. Microsoft certifications, um, uh, the role-based certifications like this one, Azure Data Engineer Associate, expire after a year. So when you earn your certification, it will be active for a year. And then you have to renew the certification. Why do you have to renew the certification? Because we know technology is changing a lot and it's changing very fast. And we want to be sure that your certification is proving that you have the skills for the roles and the technologies that are in market right now. So we define and design this renewal process so you can prove that you have the skills with the technology today, not the technology 3 years ago or 4 years ago. So this renewal process is super simple. Basically, you earn your certification, and 1 year start to count the day you earn your certification, and you have the option to renew your certification anytime 6 months before your certification expires. So when you earn it, your certification expires 1 year later, and you have 6 months to renew before it expires. And the renewal is a simple process. It's a all you need to do is to take a free online and proctor assessment on Microsoft Learn, and if you pass the assessment, you will renew your certification for another year. And you have to do this every year until we retire the certification, or you decide you don't want to renew it anymore. But we are doing this because we are getting feedback from learners, from organizations, that our certifications need to stay up to date with the technology evolution. So we are doing this process now. Now, the process is super simple. It's 3 steps. If you can move on, James, you need to be sure that you have your Microsoft Learn profile connected to your certification profile so you can get notifications every time you come to Microsoft Learn. You will get a notification when your certification is due to renew. If you can take a look, we have curated content to help you figure out what has changed in the technology so you can catch up on your skills and learning, and then you pass the free online assessment. So it's super simple, 3 simple steps. And in the next slide, you will see resources. So if you want to learn more about this, go to these links, aka .ms renew your cert. You will see all the information there. And if you want to see which one of your certifications are ready, you can go to your certification dashboard. And don't forget that every time you learn something new, every time you pass an exam and earn a certification, it, this is a great achievement. So don't forget to celebrate your skills with your colleagues and with your network, and let us know every time you pass one exam because we want to celebrate with you. So don't forget, stay tuned for your certification renewal. And we want to thank the Data Platform Summit 2022 for inviting us and for allow us to share this time with you. We expect this was a good investment of your time. And if you still have questions, we will be still here for a couple more minutes before the session ends. And don't forget, in the next slide is don't forget to complete your feedback. And thank you for joining us today. James, you want to say goodbye to our learners?
Yes, thank you guys for all your time, and thanks for considering Microsoft for all your product offerings.